1. Let me tell you about this interesting 1985 Chevy C10 I found on Craigslist. Being completely honest with you, this square body long bed has some character to it, and at $8,500, we need to look at both its strengths and weaknesses. Under the hood, there's some serious business going on. We're looking at a modified 350 small block that's been bored .30 over with a 4-bolt main. That's some solid foundation right there. The owner's done some nice performance upgrades with an aluminum intake, Elderbrook carb, double hump X code heads, rattler cam, and hooker headers. That's a pretty sweet setup that should give this truck some real muscle. Now, let's keep it real. This truck isn't perfect, and I want to be straight with you. With 171,000 miles on the clock, it's seen its share of roads. The interior shows its age with a worn-out seat and some cracks in the dash, which is pretty typical for these old C10s. The brown paint and overall condition is described as fair by the seller, so don't expect a show truck. But here's the good news. It runs and drives with no issues according to the seller, and it's got a clean title. These square-body C10s are becoming increasingly popular. And with that performance-built 350 under the hood, you've got a solid platform for either keeping it as a reliable work truck or turning it into something special. 2. Let me tell you about this 1985 Dodge Ram I just found for $8,000. I'm going to be completely straight with you about this one, because that's what we're all about here. So, we're looking at a project truck that the current owner has already invested some serious work into. The odometer shows 35,889, but let's be real, it's rolled over, so we're talking 135,889 plus miles here. The seller's being upfront about that, which I appreciate. Now here's the good news. This Ram has received some crucial upgrades. We're talking about a new transmission, that's a big ticket item right there, fresh rims and tires, new brake lines, and brake work. These are all essential components that make a truck actually roadworthy and safe. However, and I want to be totally honest here, the seller describes the condition as fair and mentions that it needs someone to bring it over the finish line. That's code for, this is still a project truck that needs more love. The seller's straight up telling us they've done the heavy lifting with the mechanical basics, but there's more work to be done. At $8,000, you're buying a classic Ram that's mechanically sorted in the crucial areas, but likely needs cosmetic work and possibly other mechanical attention. The clean title is definitely a plus, and these old Rams are getting harder to find, especially with major mechanical work already done. 3. I've got something really special to share with you. A 1969 Ford F100 that's about as authentic as they come. At $25,000, let me tell you why this piece of American history deserves your attention. This isn't just any F100. We're looking at a documented one-owner truck that was originally purchased in East Grand Forks, Minnesota, with the original sales receipt to prove it. What makes this even more incredible is that it's still running its original powertrain. That legendary 300 cubic inch inline-six paired with a 3-on-the-tree manual transmission. The truck presents beautifully in raven black paint, and it's a custom cab Ranger model, the upscale version for its time. The interior features a dark red vinyl bench seat, keeping things period correct. What's really impressive is the documentation. We're talking original operator's manual, warranty booklet, and service records dating back to 1994. Recent mechanical attention includes new shocks all around, a fresh battery, and a carburetor rebuild as of May 2024. With 98,925 original miles, the seller says it runs like a sewing machine. Exactly what you want to hear about these bulletproof inline sixes. The chrome and bright work are reported to be in nice condition, and there's a well-done spray-in bed liner. This truck has spent most of its life in Bismarck, North Dakota, and now comes with a clean New Jersey title. What really sets this F100 apart is its unmolested condition, no crazy modifications or improvements that take away from its originality. As the seller correctly points out, they're only original once, and this one appears to be a true survivor. 4. Let me tell you about this 1983 Chevy S10 Durango I found, and I'm going to be completely straight with you about this one. At $14,900, we need to really break this down. This is an extended cab. They called it extra cab. 4x4 model with the 2.8-liter V6 and automatic transmission. It's showing 75,000 miles on the clock, comes in red with gray interior and bucket seats, and it's being sold by a dealership. Now, I need to be honest here. While these first-gen S10s are becoming increasingly collectible, especially the 4x4 models, $14,900 is a pretty steep asking price. Even for a clean example, that's pushing into serious collector territory. The Durango package was a nice upgrade for its time, but you'll want to thoroughly inspect this one to justify that price tag. The seller doesn't provide much detail about the condition, maintenance history, or any restoration work that might have been done. For reference, these trucks originally came with the 2.8 LV6, making about 110 horsepower when new. Remember, folks, while first-gen S10s are cool trucks, and this appears to be a low-mileage example, make sure you do your homework at this price point. There might be room for negotiation, especially considering it's a dealer sale with additional fees on top of the asking price. 5. Let me tell you about this 1976 Chevy K104X4, and I really appreciate how honest the seller is being here. At $9,500, let's break down what we're looking at. This square body is powered by a 6.6L400 CI V8, and the seller's being completely transparent about its condition. They've invested some serious money in this truck, about $10K, and have replaced a ton of crucial components. We're talking about a fresh carburetor, complete ignition system overhaul, new brakes, differential services, and even interior pieces like the dashboard and trim. Now, let's be real about what you're getting. And I love how straightforward the seller is. This is what they call a mid-project driving truck. The rebuilt carb needs adjustment. It's flooding out after running a while. There's some surface rust underneath, the paint needs work, and there are some dings. The odometer shows 61K miles, but it might be 161K. They're honest about that uncertainty. What's cool is the modern touches, like that retro-style radio that actually has Bluetooth and MP3 capability. Pretty slick. The seller's motivation is genuine. They're making room for a family heirloom car, and they're not trying to hide any flaws. They straight up tell you it rides bumpy, like any old 4x4 would. The body panels aren't perfect, and it's not meant to be a daily driver. 6. Let's talk about this 1985 Chevrolet Scottsdale that's up for grabs at $8,500. I'm going to keep it real with you about what we're looking at here. This is a classic square-body Chevy powered by the 305 V8 paired with an automatic transmission. With 115,000 miles on the clock, it's got some life experience. But that's not necessarily a bad thing for these robust trucks. The sellers equipped it with some nice comfort features: power windows, power locks, power brakes, cruise control, and a tilt wheel, which was pretty fancy for a mid-80s truck. The seller describes it as a solid truck and a great candidate for restoration, which tells us a couple of things. First, while it's listed in good condition, the fact that it's called a restoration candidate suggests it needs some work to reach its full potential. The description is pretty brief, which means you'll want to inspect those typical square body rust spots and check all those power accessories to make sure they're working. At $8,500, you're looking at what appears to be a complete running square body with some desirable options. These trucks are gaining popularity, and finding one that's described as solid is getting harder. However, be prepared to invest some time and money if you want to bring it back to its former glory. 7. Me tell you about this 1985 Ford Bronco Eddie Bauer edition that's up for grabs at $10,500 OBO. I'm going to keep it real with you about what we're looking at here. This is a classic 85 with the desirable 5.8L, that's the 351 for you Ford folks, and it's showing less than 100K miles. Being an Eddie Bauer edition adds some extra appeal, as these were the premium trim models back in the day. Now let's talk straight about its condition. The seller's been upfront about some recent work. They've installed a new 33-gallon fuel tank, new power steering pump, and a new radiator reservoir. It's sitting on 35-inch tires that are reportedly in good shape, and it's got cut and turned beams, which is popular in the Bronco community for better clearance. However, and this is important, the seller admits it runs good, could run better needs carb love. That's honest talk, meaning you'll need to factor in some carburetor work to get it running at its best. On the plus side, it comes with lots of extra parts, which could be valuable depending on what they are. At $10,500 OBO, considering it's an Eddie Bauer with the 351 and some decent upgrades, it could be worth looking into. These Broncos are only getting more popular, especially the Eddie Bauer models. Just remember you'll need to budget for that carburetor work. And as with any 38-year-old 4x4, you'll want to check for the usual rust spots and mechanical wear. The OBO, or best offer, suggests some negotiating room, which might help offset the cost of the needed carburetor work. 8. Let me tell you about this absolutely stunning 1977 GMC Sierra Classic that's up for grabs at $18,500. And folks, this one's really special, especially for you square body aficionados out there. First off, this is a C20 with some seriously rare features, including that one-year-only yellow trim package that true square body fans will absolutely geek out over. This truck came loaded from the factory. We're talking cruise control, AC, tilt steering, power brakes, and it's a camper special with a big block under the hood. Speaking of that engine, the seller has completely rebuilt the factory big block from oil pan to carburetor. That's a major investment and shows the level of care put into this truck. They say it starts faster than you can turn the key, and it's reliable enough to daily drive. That's impressive for a 46-year-old truck. The interior is largely original and in fantastic shape, with some tasteful upgrades including high-quality replacement carpet from CJ Pony Parts and a custom leather headliner. The dash is described as near mint, and all gauges are working. That's increasingly rare for these old trucks. On the outside, those powder-coated wheels matching the body color with the original factory hubcaps still in nice condition really set it off. The seller's description suggests this is one of those rare finds where originality meets careful preservation and thoughtful upgrades. 9. I want to tell you about a pretty special 1969 Chevy C10 that's listed for $9,800. Though the description mentions $11,500, might want to clarify that with the seller. This one's got a touching story behind it that really adds to its character. This is a genuine survivor short bed C10 with its original straight-six engine and 3-speed manual transmission, column shift. What makes this truck particularly interesting is that it was a project shared between the seller and their grandfather, which adds a really personal dimension to its history. Let's be completely honest about the condition. The seller's really upfront about it. There are the typical rust spots you'd expect in a 54-year-old truck. Some rust in the rocker panels on both sides, and minor rust in the floor pans. However, they note that the fenders, doors, and drip rails are in good shape, which is actually pretty important for these old C10s. The good news is that it's a running and driving truck with fairly new tires. Being a survivor means it hasn't been modified or messed with. It's still got that original character that makes these C10s so special. The original plan was for the seller and their grandfather to restore it to original condition. But sadly, after their grandfather's passing, the truck has mostly been sitting in the garage. At this price point, you're getting a complete, running and driving C10 with a known history and honest disclosure about its condition. These short bed C10s are becoming increasingly popular, and finding one that hasn't been modified can be pretty rare. 10. Let me tell you about this fascinating 1955 Chevy C3100 I found on Craigslist. For $24,000, we're looking at a piece of genuine American automotive history. The C3100 was part of Chevy's Task Force generation, and this one's running the original 235 straight-six engine paired with a 3-speed manual transmission. That's pure classic trucking right there. With 94,000 miles on the clock and a clean title, this truck has definitely lived some life, but these old workhorses were built to last. The seller's keeping it pretty brief in their description, which honestly makes me a bit cautious. I'd love to know more about its current condition, restoration history, and whether that 235 engine is numbers matching. At $24K, you're in the ballpark for these trucks, though prices can vary widely based on condition and originality. The seller seems pretty firm with their no-trade stance and isn't interested in email negotiations, which tells me they know what they want. Look, I've got to be straight with you. Without more details or photos, I'd absolutely recommend seeing this truck in person before making any decisions. These 55s are gorgeous pieces of American history when they're right, but you'll want to check for the usual suspects. Rust in the cab corners, floor pans and bed, plus make sure that straight 6 is running smooth. 11. Let me tell you about this absolutely fascinating 1973 Ford Bronco that's caught my attention. At $29,500, we're looking at a seriously interesting piece of Ford history with some awesome originality. This is one of those special finds. It's the first year Ford offered automatic transmission and power steering in the Bronco, and this one's got the desirable sport package. What makes this Bronco particularly intriguing is its story. One family owned it from new in South Dakota, used it for goose hunting, and the current seller has had it for about 20 years. With 77,000 original miles, it's still wearing its original seafoam green paint, with what the seller describes as great patina. Under the hood, you've got the robust 302 V8, and being a Dakota, Wyoming vehicle most of its life means it's escaped the severe rust issues that plague many Broncos. Let's be completely honest here. There are some rust issues that need to be mentioned. The seller's up front about rust in the rocker panels, under the hood, and near the passenger side roll bar mount. But for a 50-year-old Bronco, that's actually pretty reasonable compared to many others I've seen. What's really cool is that everything works. All gauges, lights, heater, and even the horn. It comes with the hard top and doors, and the seller mentions it runs and drives great, needing nothing. These early Broncos are seriously hot in the collector market right now, and this one's got that perfect mix of originality and usability. At $29,500, considering the current Bronco market and this one's condition and history, it's actually in the reasonable range. Just remember, you're getting a classic with some character and minor rust issues, but also a documented history and lots of original features that are hard to find these days. 12. Let me tell you about this interesting 1983 Ford Bronco that's up for grabs at $17,500. This one's got quite a story, and I'm going to be completely straight with you about it. First off, let's address the elephant in the room. This Bronco has a somewhat murky past, coming from what the seller honestly describes as a sketchy dealer in Chicago. The odometer's broken, and the true mileage is unknown. However, what makes this Bronco intriguing is its extensive 2023 mechanical overhaul. The heart of this beast is a fresh Napa 351W crate motor with only about 5,000 miles on it. The seller's gone modern with a Fitec fuel injection conversion, which is a sweet upgrade from the original carbureted setup. They've basically rebuilt this thing from the ground up in 2023. We're talking new transfer case mounts, fresh fluids and filters, new alternator, power steering pump, AC system, exhaust, and even a new 33-gallon fuel tank with a fuel pump to support the fuel injection. The interior is reportedly great, and they've added some modern touches like a Bluetooth head unit with new speakers. However, the seller's upfront about cosmetic flaws. They mention there's a video showing these issues, and the fuel gauge doesn't work. At $17,500, considering all the recent mechanical work and upgrades, you're looking at a Bronco that's been modernized under the skin but keeps its classic looks. It's currently in Colorado, but comes with a clean Florida title. 13. Let me tell you about this seriously cool 1976 Chevy K5 Blazer Chalet that's up for grabs at $15,000. This isn't just any K5. We're talking about #215 out of only 1,700 Chalets ever produced, making it a pretty rare bird in the Blazer world. The Chalet was Chevy's answer to the camping craze of the 70s, essentially a Blazer with a built-in camper, and finding one today is pretty special. The current owner has clearly put some serious thought and work into modernizing this rig while keeping its character. Under the hood, you've got a rebuilt 350 V8, and they've upgraded the transmission to a 700 R4. That's a smart move as it gives you overdrive for better highway cruising. The transfer case has been rebuilt and converted from full-time to part-time 4x4, which many folks prefer. They've addressed the crucial reliability stuff too. New fuel tank, stainless steel fuel and brake lines, no more rusty lines to worry about, and a new radiator. The stance is beefed up with a 3-inch lift kit, method wheels, and 33-inch tires. One interesting mod is the front clip swap from a 1990 Blazer. But they note it's easily reversible if you're a purist wanting the original round headlight look. Now, being completely honest, there are a few items still on the to-do list. The AC needs to be installed, some cushions need recovering, and the pop-top screens need replacement. The seller mentions they're working on these items and will adjust the price accordingly. 14. Let me tell you about this interesting 1984 Ford F-150 XLT that's popped up for $4,300. This is one of those classic workhorses from the 80s, and for the price point, it's worth taking a look at what we've got here. We're looking at a long bed configuration powered by the robust 351 Windsor V8. That's a solid engine choice that's known for its reliability and has plenty of aftermarket support. With 84,000 miles on the clock and a clean California title, that's relatively low mileage for these old Fords. Though remember, these are 40-year-old trucks now. The seller claims it's rust-free, which is a huge plus if accurate. Being a California truck helps make this claim believable. It's equipped with AC, which is a nice feature for a truck of this vintage, though the listing doesn't mention if it's currently working. Now let's be completely honest here. There's one important detail we need to address. It's currently on non-op status at the DMV. While the seller states it runs and drives, you'll need to factor in the cost and process of getting it properly registered and road legal again. At $4,300, and they're open to offers, you're looking at an entry-level price point for a classic F-150. These trucks are getting harder to find in rust-free condition, and the 351W is a desirable engine. However, given the non-op status, you'll want to do a thorough inspection and maybe budget for some mechanical refreshing. 15. Let me tell you about this 1971 Chevy C10 long bed that's up for grabs for $10,000. I've got to be straight with you about this one. It's got some stories to tell, and we need to address both the good and the challenging aspects. Let's start with the heart of this truck. It's running a 327 small block with some nice upgrades, including an Edelbrock carb. The seller mentions that a shop has gone through the motor and installed fresh wiring. Plus, it's got a new alternator and radiator. That's good news for reliability. They say it starts right up every time, which is always encouraging. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. This truck has 280,000 miles on it, not the 3,000 listed in the basic stats, though that number isn't reflective of the engine work done. The body has been repainted black at some point, but there's an interesting detail where the original blue shows through in certain light. Being honest about the condition, there's what the seller calls usual minimal rust, but they specifically mention a couple bad spots on the rockers. If you're familiar with C10S, rocker rust can be a bigger job than it first appears, so you'll want to inspect those areas carefully. On the plus side, it's registered as a collector vehicle in Washington State and comes with a clean title. The seller's been using it regularly, taking it around the block weekly, which is generally better for these old trucks than sitting static. 16. We're diving into a classic find on Craigslist. A 1972 Chevy C20 that's up for grabs at just $2,000. This vintage beauty has seen its fair share of miles, with the odometer reading 70,732. But hey, that's just a testament to the adventures this truck has been on. Now, I've got to be straight with you. The seller mentions that the condition is fair, so you can expect some wear and tear. But that's all part of the charm, right? This C20 has been around the block, and it's got the battle scars to prove it. The paint job is blue, which could use some TLC, but it's all about the potential, folks. Under the hood, you'll find a mighty 8-cylinder engine that's ready to roar to life. And with an automatic transmission, you can cruise down the highway with ease. The seller also notes that the title is clean, so you can have peace of mind knowing that this classic is all yours. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but it's in fair condition. And you're right. This C20 isn't a showroom queen, but that's not what it's about. It's about the history, the character, and the opportunity to make it your own. With some elbow grease and a little love, this 1972 Chevy C20 could be the project truck of your dreams. 17. The 1980 Ford F-150 stepside you're looking at is quite a find for any classic truck enthusiast. This brown beauty is powered by Ford's legendary 300 cubic inch straight-six engine, which was known for its reliability and torque, perfect for a workhorse pickup. The 4-speed manual transmission with overdrive is a desirable feature, giving you better fuel economy on the highway. With 172,956 miles on the clock, this F-150 has seen its share of work, but that's not necessarily a bad thing for these robust trucks. The fact that it sat for 5 years and needed a distributor replacement is pretty typical for vehicles of this age, and it's good that this issue has been addressed. The sellers mention that it runs and drives just fine after the repair is promising, and the low mileage added since 2014, only 10K, suggests it hasn't been heavily used recently. Now let's talk about what needs attention. The wood bed floor needs replacement, which is a common issue with these old trucks. The good news is that bedwood replacement is a straightforward DIY project that many enthusiasts actually enjoy tackling. The nearly new tires are definitely a plus, as that's a significant expense you won't have to worry about immediately. For $6,500, considering the current classic truck market, this F-150 sits in an interesting spot. These step-side models have a distinctive classic look that many collectors appreciate, and the straight-six/manual combination is becoming increasingly desirable among enthusiasts. The clean title and RWD configuration are both positive points for a classic truck of this era. 18. We need to be straight up about this one. This 1980 Silverado is definitely a project truck, and not in the fun weekend tinkering kind of way. The seller is at least honest about its condition, listing it as crashed right in the title. We're looking at a black short-bed 4x4 with a monster 454 big block under the hood, which would normally be something to get excited about, but there are some serious red flags here. The truck has to be towed away. That's never a good start. The suspension damage mentioned in the listing suggests this isn't just a simple fix, and given it's a 4x4, repairs could get expensive quickly. These old 4x4 systems can be complex, and damaged suspension components on a truck this age might be harder to source than you'd think. Now, the 100,000 miles showing on the odometer might seem reasonable for a 43-year-old truck, but with the crash damage and suspension issues, the mileage is almost irrelevant at this point. The clean title is about the only positive note here, aside from the presence of that 454 engine, which could be valuable for parts if it's still in good condition. At $2,800, you're essentially buying a parts truck or a very ambitious project. The 454 engine alone could be worth a decent chunk of that asking price if it's salvageable. But anyone considering this purchase needs to go in with their eyes wide open. This isn't a running and driving truck. It's a damaged vehicle that needs significant work or could serve as a donor for other projects. For the right person with the right skills and resources, there might be value here, but this is definitely not a truck for someone hoping to get back on the road quickly or cheaply. 19. Let me tell you about this K5 Blazer. It's a prime example of why these 70s Chevys have such a devoted following. You're looking at a survivor here with all original sheet metal, which is incredibly rare for these trucks, especially in a low rust condition. The Peterbilt red paint job certainly makes it stand out. Under the hood, you've got the tried and true 350 V8 paired with a 350 automatic transmission, one of Chevy's most reliable powertrains. The aluminum radiator upgrade is a smart addition that helps keep things running cool. Those 35-inch BFG mud terrains aren't cheap tires, and being newer, that's a significant value added to the package. The odometer showing 107,073 miles is relatively low for a 47-year-old vehicle, and the seller's straightforward admission that it's far from perfect while emphasizing its dependability tells me they're being honest about its condition. The fact that it's never been restored but rather just kept up suggests this is a well-maintained, honest truck. What really catches my attention is the seller's emphasis on its reliability as a daily driver. That's not something you hear often about vehicles of this vintage. The claim that everything works is pretty bold for a 76. And if true, that's impressive. At $15,500, considering the current market for K5 Blazers, especially ones with original sheet metal and low rust, this seems reasonably priced. The seller mentions they've priced it under reasonable to eliminate messing around. And they're likely right. Clean K5s have been commanding strong prices lately. 20. Let me tell you about this 67 Chevy C20 custom camper. It's one of those time capsules that classic truck enthusiasts dream about finding. Under the hood, you've got the tried and true 327 small block paired with an automatic transmission, a combination that's both reliable and enjoyable to drive. The odometer shows 65,665 miles, which is remarkably low for a truck of this vintage. What really makes this C20 special is its originality. We're talking original paint, interior, and most of the glass. The dealer-installed AC is a rare find for a 67, and the fact that it still works is pretty incredible. Speaking of working components, it's rare to find a classic where everything functions, from the heater to the gauges and even the horn. Now let's be honest about the imperfections. There's a cracked windshield that needs replacement, some body dings consistent with its age, and a tear in the driver's seat. The bed shows surface rust from its years of camper duty, but here's the golden ticket. The crucial structural areas are solid. We're talking clean cab corners, rockers, and floor pans, which are typically the first places these old Chevys rot out. The manual steering might be a workout in parking lots, but you've got power brakes to help you stop. The non-original mirrors are a minor detail in the grand scheme of things. For $12,000 with some wiggle room for cash, you're looking at a largely original, functioning, classic truck that survived remarkably well. The seller's confidence in its drivability, would not be afraid to drive it anywhere, speaks volumes about its mechanical condition.